You're watching All 24 News World News Program, broadcasting to you live from the capital. Cheers to the headlines. President Tebboune reaffirms Algeria's stance on just causes, non-interference in Tunisia's internal affairs, and boasts strong economic growth. Also on news tonight, Arab coalition bombs targets Mukalla port as Yemen gives UAE 24 hours to withdraw. Saudi Arabia calls UAE's actions extremely dangerous. Coming up as well, in Somalia, protests continue over Zionist recognition of Somaliland. Mogadishu calls the recognition an attack on unity, and Algeria defends Somalia's sovereignty at the United Nations. And following an attack near Putin's residence, Russia vows retaliation, accuses Europe of aggression. Kiev implicates Moscow in Black Sea wheat ship attacks. Welcome back. First up in our news tonight, on Tuesday, President Abdelmadjid Tebboune addressed the nation in a joint session of parliament, reaffirming his commitment to engaging with the people's representatives in line with the constitutional tradition. The ceremony held at the Palace of Nations, west of Algiers, opened with verses from the Holy Quran, followed by the national anthem in the presence of members of both chambers of parliament and senior state officials.
الحمد لله رب العالمين قاسما بالنازلات الماحقات والدماء الزاكيات الطاهرات قاسما بالنازلات الماحقات والدماء الزاكيات الطاهرات والجنود اللامعات الخافقات للجبال الشامخات الشاهقات نحن ظرنا بحياة وممات وعقدنا العزم أن نحيا الجزائر فاشهدوا فاشهدوا فاشهدوا.
President Abdelmadjid Tebboune reaffirmed Algeria's firm diplomatic positions, underscoring its support for just causes worldwide, foremost the Palestinian and Sahrawi causes. Addressing the nation before a joint session of parliament, he stressed Algeria's unwavering stance on Palestine, describing the events in Gaza as a systematic genocide carried out in silence. Despite mounting external pressure, Algeria, he said, remains steadfast in its diplomacy and faithful to its principles.
إن شاء الله بالنسبة للدبلوماسية تاعنا أعتقد أن شيء اللي شفتوه وعرفتوه هذيك هي الحقيقة. بلدنا ما تغيرتش وما تتغيرش رغم التهديدات المباشرة أو الغير المباشرة ولا يأشروا لنا من بعيد وهم يضيعوا في وقتهم. احنا مع فلسطين وما نتخلاش على فلسطين وكلمتنا نقولها ولا نخاف فيها لومة لائم.
Algeria reaffirms its support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination through a free referendum, stressing that their choice must be respected, whatever it may be, and that no one can decide on their behalf.
نفس الشيء بالنسبة للصحراء الغربية. احنا نطلبوا باش يحترموا الشعوب. هذه أرض فيها شعب. استأجروا وقلنا لكم لما يكون فيه استفتاء والإخوان سكان ساقية الحمراء والذهب اللي راهم لاجئين في الدول المجاورة لاجئين في إسبانيا، لما يقول لك أنا باغي استقلالي سيف تحترم القرار تاعو. إذا يقول لك أنا معليش أنا قابل نكون مع الدولة الفلانية ولا داك شغله، وأنا التزمت بلي ما نكونوش صحراويين أكثر من صحراويين.
President Abdelmadjid Tebboune affirmed that Algeria has never and will never interfere in Tunisia's internal affairs. Speaking to the nation before a joint session of parliament, he dismissed claims of Algerian military action in Tunisia as baseless posturing, warning that such allegations aim to sow discord between the two countries by exploiting narrow-minded individuals.
باش فيه محاولات زعزعت الاقتصاد تاع تونس، زعزعت المودة اللي بين تونس والجزائر، واللي ما هيش جديدة يعني أمور قديمة بيننا وبين تونس. حتى أيام الاستعمار كان اللجوء إلى تونس كأنك تمشي لوطنك الثاني، ودمنا نساجم في ساقية سيدي يوسف وفيه تضحيات، وما جاتناش حنا خيانة من تونس. جوارنا ما أديناهم ما أدونا، علاقاتنا طيبة. اليوم فيه محاولات لزرع بذور التفرقة بيننا وبين تونس باستعمال العقول ضيقة، إن لم أقول المستأجرة، لخلق بلبلة ارتفاقيات وهذه وما. احنا عندنا نهائيا هذه باش ما نزيدوش ندخلوا فيها. أمننا امتداده في تونس، وأمن تونس امتداده في الجزائر. وشهادة لله أمام ممثلين الشعب الجزائري، عمري ولا دخلت في الأمور الداخلية تاع تونس، مانعين نفوسنا بس ندخل في أمورهم الداخلية، كما احنا ما نحبوش اللي يدخل لنا في أمورنا الداخلية. في احترام متبادل، يعني لا أقصى حد، يحتاجونا رانا هنا.
President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, highlighted Algeria's strong macroeconomic indicators, noting historic gains in the industrial sector and local pharmaceutical production. He added that the national economy grew by 4% last year, with forecasts showing this momentum continuing through 2026, positioning Algeria as one of the most dynamic economies in the Mediterranean and North Africa region.
الاقتصاد الوطني منذ سنة 2023 معدل نمو للناتج الداخلي الخام في حدود 4%، ويستمر في 2026 في نفس المضمار، وهو ما يجعله من بين الاقتصادات الأكثر ديناميكية في المحيط، في البحر الأبيض المتوسط، وحتى في إفريقيا الشمالية بالأخص. أيتها السيدات، أيها السادة، إن طموحنا في بناء اقتصاد قوي وسيد يتوجه إلى قطاعات استراتيجية، ومنها قطاع الصناعة. ومن نتائج هذا المسعى أن شعبة الصلب والإسمنت ومواد البناء والصناعات الغذائية لم تعد مصدر إنتاج، بل صارت تهيكل النمو وتعزز الابتكار وتفتح آفاق اقتصادية إيجابية إن شاء الله.
Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Ammar Benjama, said in his final Security Council address that Algeria fulfilled its duties during its term. He highlighted the country's commitment to international peace and security and called on Council members to continue striving for justice worldwide.
Now, it would be remiss of me to end without paying tribute to my A3+ colleagues. In particular, I'd like to pay tribute to the colleagues coming from a non-African country, colleagues which nonetheless held on throughout the mandate and committed themselves to staunchly defending African causes here on this council. I am referring, of course, to our colleague from Guyana.
In his speech, Algerian Ambassador Ammar Ben Jama praised the A3+ group for its strong advocacy of African issues within the Security Council.
L'Algérie va quitter ce Conseil.
Algeria will leave this council feeling that it has done what it needed to do. It has fulfilled its duty. I would like here to address my fellow elected members of this council, and I would also like to address those who will bear the heavy responsibility of working on the council. I call on them all to work with perseverance and to always strive to involve all members of the United Nations in the council's work, by which I mean both non-permanent and permanent members, so as to achieve our shared objectives, namely the preservation of international peace and security. I would like to add another element that underscores the importance of the elected members of this council, and that is the issue of justice.
Moving on to Yemen now, the Arab coalition announced Tuesday a limited military operation targeting weapons and military vehicles at the port of Mukalla. According to the coalition, the strikes hit cargo from 2 ships arriving from Fujairah in the UAE, which lacked official permits. The crews reportedly disabled tracking systems while unloading large quantities of weapons and combat vehicles, a move seen as fueling the conflict and violating the efforts to maintain calm and pursue a peaceful solution.
Regrettably, the statement issued by the Joint Forces Command of the coalition to support legitimacy confirmed the UAE's announcement regarding the shipment of 2 vessels from Al Fakir port carrying large quantities of weapons, armored vehicles and military equipment, and their entry into Yemeni ports without official permits, with the aim of equipping the forces of the Southern Transitional Council. This escalatory move, an apparent attempt to undermine security and stability in the governorates of Hadramaut and Al-Mahra, seems to be a continuation of a systematic effort over the years to exert pressure on the Southern Transitional Council through various means. These unilateral actions exploit the legitimate cause of the South and seek to disrupt the constitutional state institutions represented by the Presidential Leadership Council and the government.
Yemen's Presidential Leadership Council head Rashid Al-Alimi has ordered all Emirati forces to leave the country within 24 hours. Al-Alimi also cancelled the defense pact with the UAE and ordered Yemeni troops into eastern governorates to hand over their sites to coalition-aligned forces. He declared a 90-day nationwide state of emergency and a 72-hour total blockade on all ports and crossings.
It has been definitively confirmed that the United Arab Emirates is involved in exerting pressure on and directing the Southern Transitional Council to undermine and rebel against the authority of the state. This has been carried out through military escalation and attacks on the positions of the armed forces, in addition to repeated assaults on the tribes of Hadramaut and on innocent civilians. These actions have also included the closure of Siyun Airport to commercial flights, resulting in grave and serious violations against Yemeni citizens. Such actions constitute a blatant attack on the state and a complete undermining of its internal authority, posing a direct threat to our security and stability, the cohesion of our institutions and our national unity, while inflicting harm on our people. Accordingly, we have taken a series of decisions which will be announced in due course, aimed at protecting civilians, safeguarding the legal status of the state and correcting the course of the partnership within the framework of the coalition to support legitimacy.
Saudi Arabia has now called on the UAE to withdraw its forces from Yemen within 24 hours. The Foreign Ministry says this is in response to a request from Yemen's Presidential Leadership Council. In a statement, it stressed the need for an immediate halt to all external military and financial support for any faction in Yemen. It emphasized the importance of upholding principles of brotherhood and good neighborliness.
Saudi Arabia stresses that the UAE should withdraw its military forces from Yemen within 24 hours and stop all military or financial support to any party in the country. The kingdom calls for wisdom, prioritizing GCC brotherhood, good neighborly relations, and the interests of Yemen, while preserving strong bilateral ties and promoting regional stability and prosperity.
Saudi Arabia on Tuesday expressed regret over what it described as UAE actions pressuring Southern Transitional Council forces in Yemen to carry out military operations near the kingdom's borders. In a statement, the Saudi Foreign Ministry said such moves threaten Saudi security and undermine stability in Yemen and the wider region, stressing that any threat to the kingdom's security is a red line and will be met with all necessary measures.
Saudi Arabia reaffirms its commitment to Yemen's security, stability and sovereignty, and its full support for the President of the Presidential Leadership Council and his government. In this context, it reiterates that the southern question is a just cause with historical and social dimensions, and that the only way to address it is through dialogue at the negotiating table within a comprehensive political solution in Yemen, in which all Yemeni components will participate, including the Southern Transitional Council.
The Saudi Foreign Ministry reaffirmed its commitment to Yemen's security, stability and sovereignty, pledging full support for the Presidential Leadership Council and its government. It stressed that the comprehensive political solution involving all Yemeni parties is the only way forward.
It notes that the steps taken by the sisterly United Arab Emirates are extremely dangerous, are inconsistent with the foundations upon which the coalition to support legitimacy in Yemen was established, and do not serve its efforts to achieve Yemen's security and stability. In this context, the kingdom affirms that any infringement upon or threat to its national security is a red line, and that it will not hesitate to take all necessary steps and measures to confront and neutralize it.
The Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abu Ghaid condemned military moves aimed at imposing a separatist agenda in Yemen. He warned that such actions threaten Yemen's unity and regional security, calling for an immediate halt to military escalation in Hadramaut and Al-Mahra. Abu Ghaid also urged member states to back the legitimate Yemeni government, maintain Arab solidarity and exercise restraint during this critical period. Moving on to another topical developments, hundreds of Somalis gathered in Mogadishu to protest Zionist entities' recognition of the self-declared Republic of Somaliland. Demonstrators in the capital stadium waved Somali flags and chanted slogans denouncing what they called interference in Somalia's sovereignty. They also welcomed condemnations of the move issued by the UN Security Council members.
I warmly welcome the decision of the UN. It is an important decision based on a legal framework that the world agrees upon.
Today, a demonstration is taking place at Mogadishu Stadium. We support the resolution issued by the UN as it is a timely and appropriate decision. Jews cannot divide our country, cannot come to it, and cannot recognize any region that is part of us.
The Somali ambassador to the UN, Abu Bakr Atman, urged Security Council members to take a united stand against the illegal resolution, praising international support for Somalia's territorial integrity.
This act of aggression is aimed at encouraging fragmentation of the territory of Somalia, which is the northwestern region, is an integral part and is destabilizing the Horn of Africa, entire Horn of Africa, and the Red Sea region. It should be firmly rejected and condemned unequivocally by all member states. A3+ therefore rejects this announcement by Israel and calls for it to be rescinded.
Somalia's UN representative firmly rejected plans to relocate Palestinians to the self-declared Republic of Somaliland, stressing that any forced displacement is unacceptable, and added that Palestinians must have the right to self-determination and their own state.
A3+ unequivocally reject any steps aimed at advancing this objective, including any attempt by Israel to relocate the Palestinian population from Gaza to northwestern region of Somalia. This action is not only unlawful, but is morally reprehensible. Recalling the provisional measures and advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice regarding the forcible displacement of Palestinian people from their land.
From the streets of Mogadishu to the halls of the United Nations, Somalia does not recognize the so-called Somaliland region. The move by the Zionist entity to recognize Somaliland has sparked sharp criticism with African members of the UN Security Council and the A3+ group, warning it threatens Somalia's sovereignty and regional stability. Here's Yasin Erkti with a report.
African members of the UN Security Council, joined by partners in the A3+ group, have strongly condemned the Zionist recognition of Somaliland, warning that it threatens Somalia's sovereignty and regional stability. In New York, the Security Council stressed that any unilateral recognition of Somaliland directly violates Somalia's territorial integrity, which is guaranteed under international law and recognized globally.
It strongly condemns the flagrant assault by Israel on the unity and the territorial integrity of Somalia by recognizing as an independent entity to the northwestern region of Somalia, so-called Somaliland, which is legally incapable of entering into any agreement or arrangement or recognition with another country. Any such purported arrangements are therefore null and void.
Somaliland, a former British protectorate in northern Somalia, declared independence in 1991 but has never been officially recognized by the UN. The A3+ group warned that such actions risk fragmenting Somalia, particularly in the north, and could destabilize the Horn of Africa and the strategically vital Red Sea corridor. For its part, Somalia stressed they will remain an integral and indivisible state.
This act of aggression is aimed at encouraging fragmentation of the territory of Somalia, which is the northwestern region, is an integral part and is destabilizing the Horn of Africa, entire Horn of Africa, and the Red Sea region. It should be firmly rejected and condemned unequivocally by all member states. A3+ therefore rejects this announcement by Israel and calls for it to be rescinded.
Meanwhile, Algeria's UN ambassador Ammar Benjama reaffirmed his country's support for Somalia's unity and the Palestinian people's right to self-determination. He called on the international community to uphold the UN Charter and reject any actions that undermine sovereignty or people's rights through illegal means.
I would like to mention 2 points. First of all, I would like to fully align myself with what seemed to me like an improvisation on your part. Majestic improvisation, particularly relevant. I'm referring to what you said about the difference in substance, in nature, between the situation in Palestine and the situation in Somaliland, which, the way we see it, is an integral part of Somalia.
From New York to Mogadishu, Somalia reaffirms Somaliland is an integral part of the Somali Federation, and any attempt to alter that status unilaterally threatens regional security and international law.
Moving on to other news, Sahrawi organizations have condemned ongoing repression by the Moroccan occupation forces in Western Sahara following the incident involving activist Maluma Abdullah at La'youn airport. The Sahrawi Association of Victims of Grave Human Rights Violations called the humiliating search of Abdullah a blatant violation of human rights.
The Sahrawi Association of Victims of Grave Human Rights Violations committed by the Moroccan state expresses its strong condemnation and absolute denunciation of the degrading and humiliating search to which the known Sahrawi activist Maluma Abdullah was subjected at the airport of the occupied city of La'youn. This degrading and provocative search, carried out in deliberate and selective manner and without any legal justification, constitutes a flagrant violation of human rights. It cannot be separated from the political activist background of our sister Maluma Abdullah.
Russia has vowed to retaliate after what it calls a Ukrainian attempt to attack President Vladimir Putin's residence with drones. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova stated Moscow would respond to the incident. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the Russian military knows how, when, and with what means to respond to what he described as Kiev's attempts to target the residents in the Novgorod region.
This is indeed a terrorist act aimed at disrupting the negotiations. It is directed not only personally against President Putin. And here I would like to recall what Zelensky said about Putin and against Trump. It is aimed to undermine President Trump's effort to advance a peaceful settlement to the conflict in Ukraine.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused 4 European countries of backing Ukraine in what he called hostile plans against Russia. In a statement Tuesday, Lavrov claimed that the presence of such forces near Russia's borders serves the agenda of European actors seeking to carry out a pre-planned aggression.
The main goal of Brussels, Berlin, Paris and London is to keep a regime that bans the Russian language and media, destroys Russian historical and cultural sites, promotes Nazi ideology and brutally represses dissent. Such entities are what Europe's Russia haters need to prepare a new act of aggression against our country.
For its part, Ukraine has accused Russia of targeting 2 civilian wheat ships in the Black Sea. The Ukrainian Navy says Russian drone strikes hit the vessels, the Imakris 3 and Captain Karam, as they were entering a Ukrainian port. Kiev warns that such attacks endanger civilian lives and threaten global food security. President Putin has held a phone call with Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian. The Kremlin says they discussed Iran's nuclear program. The call comes as the Russian presidential spokesperson called on all parties to show restraint and prioritize dialogue on the issue.
We will certainly continue our contact with all parties. We believe that it is necessary to refrain from any steps that could lead to escalation in the region. We continue to develop warm and constructive relations with Tehran, including efforts to promote de-escalation in such a troubled region.
Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has vowed that Tehran's response to any new aggression from Israeli occupation would be severe. Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf also asserted Iran's right to self-defense, warning its future actions could be what he called unpredictable. On the Palestinian front, the Israeli occupation carried out heavy airstrikes Tuesday across eastern and northern Gaza Strip, again violating the ceasefire. The Palestinian media say airstrikes hit eastern Khan Yunis, the Maghazi refugee camp, and Beit Lahia. The UN Agency for Palestine Refugees condemns the Zionist occupation's decision to cut off its water and electricity in occupied Palestine. UNRWA's Commissioner General Philip Lazzarini says the move violates its UN mandate, breaches International Court of Justice rulings, and allows the Zionist occupation to seize UN property in Al-Quds, dealing a serious blow to the international order.
Yesterday's vote by the Israeli parliament passing new legislation against UNRWA is outrageous. The legislation grants the government of Israel authority to expropriate UN properties in East Jerusalem, including UNRWA's headquarters and its main vocational training center.
To another related news story, the Pentagon announced the largest arms sale to the Israeli occupation worth over $8 billion. The deal includes 25 new F-15 fighter jets with an option for 25 more, marking one of the biggest U.S. military packages ever offered to the Zionist entity. Colombia could be entering a critical economic moment. The government has announced a sharp increase in the minimum wage. The decision is sparking debate among economists, unions, and Colombian citizens. Karim Mustafa reports now.
Starting in 2026, Colombia's economy could enter a new phase as the government raises the minimum wage from roughly 1.6 million pesos to 2 million pesos per month, marking one of the most significant adjustments in recent years. President Gustavo Petro said the move aims to protect workers' purchasing power amid rising living costs.
El salario vital.
The living wage will be 2 million pesos. That means an average of 23.7 or 23.8%. There will be insults. They will say we are wrong. They will say the economy will come to a standstill. They will say many employees will be out of work. Until now, until this point, we have the highest unemployment rate of the century.
Baja de todo el siglo.
However, the decision has sparked strong criticism from the National Trade Union Council, which argues the increase lacks technical justification and fails to consider Colombia's current fiscal and economic challenges. Analysts are also warning of potential risks.
Yo le diría que aquí el balance es mucho más.
I would say the balance here is more negative for the country. Of course, there is a segment that ends up benefiting those who earn minimum wage, but really, as a country, the people who don't earn it, people in informal work, people who are subject to all the increases in the family shopping basket, directly or indirectly, end up being losers.
On the street, not everyone is happy.
It's bad because now he raised it 23%, but rent, transportation and food will all go up too. Everything is going to get more expensive and people don't think about that. And big companies will have to let go of many people, many staff, because it will be much harder for them to pay, for example, 5 employees.
I think it's going to affect us because as he raises the salary, everything will go up and it affects us in everything. It's as if nothing was done. It affects all of us a lot.
The wage hike comes amid a regional backdrop by high inflation rate. For President Petro, this will be the final minimum wage adjustment before national elections in 2026, adding a political dimension to the economic debate.
More international news stories in the News in Brief, compiled to us by Sofian Kinturi and Salman Aseb. Let's follow.
The UN Security Council adopted a resolution to extend the mandate of the United Nations' Engagement Observer Force, HITES, for an additional 6 months. During a session held on Monday, the Council emphasized ensuring that the international forces carry out their full duties and that all activities that could endanger peacekeepers be adopted. Meanwhile, Syria's UN envoy Ibrahim Alabi recalled that UN General Assembly resolution calling for the withdrawal of the Zionist occupation from the occupied Golan Heights.
The Sudanese army announced it had regained control of 2 villages in North Darfur that had been occupied by rapid support forces. Local media citing Joint Forces Commander Yazid Rashaj reported that Joint Forces fighting alongside the regular army defeated the RSF and expelled them from the areas of Ambro, Karnoui and Abu Qumra.
China launched missiles near Taiwan on the second day of its largest military exercises in the South China Sea. The Eastern Theater Command conducted live 5 drills at 5 sites around Taiwan, including naval and air strikes, as well as anti-submarine operations.
Civilians free fighting near Uvira as FIRDC clashes with M23. Hundreds of civilians fled villages near Uvira on Tuesday, carrying belongings and livestock as fighting continued between Congolese forces and M23 rebels. The FIRDC seized Kigongo, Katongo, and Luanga, but families from these areas continued streaming into Uvira amid a worsening humanitarian crisis.
And that brings us to the end of our news program. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great night.